Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're really having a more enjoyable build than I'm hearing you, and you should shout out that it's a great thing. And thank you for joining us this afternoon to this talk that is about a great customer story of La Liga and how La Liga used Azure Conversational AI in order to build new business opportunities and to have more fan engagement. I'm joined on stage with Tulsi, who's the PM of the Question and Answer Maker. She'll introduce that if you're unaware of it. And Jesus, who's the business development architect, who has a lot of responsibility of making this great story happen. And he'll be running us through a lot of cool demos and a lot of cool stuff. For myself, I'm there. I lead the dev team for the language understanding cognitive service. So I'll give you a quick introduction. I promise it won't be long. I know they're not that exciting. And then we'll jump into the really fun stuff of the customer story of La Liga, where Jesus will run us through the demo of the virtual agent, virtual assistant, and the architecture that is behind that. And then we'll zoom into the language part of creating a virtual assistant, such as the one we're going to demonstrate, with a focus on question and answer and language understanding. So practically in every session I've heard something about conversation, bot framework, and how this is picking up. And in order to create a great conversation, a lot of parts have to come together. And at the core of this is the cognitive services, which are able to add aspects of speech, vision, and language into your application in general. And to create an intelligent experience. And to create a more engaging conversational application, you need to stitch a lot of other things together, and that comes through bot framework, which allows you to integrate a lot of channels and work with a lot of devices and work with different user inputs in order to plug this into this intelligent core, and also connect with a lot of knowledge sources and enable skills that you can customize and you can use within your conversation, and also plug into your custom business logic backend that you can utilize. All within the realities of Azure, which give you security and give you compliance, and is the best enterprise platform out there. There's a growing momentum. Again, sort of as mentioned, that every keynote, Satya, Scott, Rajesh has touched on conversation in more than one point. And we see traction like more than 3,000 new bots every week. And we see 1 billion messages floating in every month globally, with a global coverage, with a lot of enterprises, some of which are listed here. And one of them that we'll be talking about today is La Liga. And for of you who do not know what La Liga is the Spanish soccer league. And it's one of the best or biggest sporting leagues in the world. And they have used, through a partnership with Microsoft, to create this virtual assistant that creates a lot of customer engagement and creates a lot of customer value. And to that, I'll lead on to Jesus to run us through this great experience. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, indeed, you were right. It's one of the biggest sports organizations in the world. But not only that, it's indeed the most followed organization of the world in social networks. Okay, is up to 1.6 billion followers of this competition in social networks. Okay, so what we have been doing with La Liga during the last 3 years is not only what we're going to introduce to you today is an assistant. It's not only that. It's a full digital transformation project where La Liga was involved with us in all of these 3 pillars. Okay, it's about improving their digital channels, improving also their brand, and finally to be able to create more value, okay, that in their side, definitely this transforms in new ways to monetize what they own, okay, that are at the end the rights and the competition itself as a product, okay, as an entertainment product indeed, okay. So for illustrating this thing, I'm going to show it to you what the virtual assistant is, okay. Well, first of all, it's one of the very few voice assistants that is capable to talk in different languages, and at the same time is multi-channel, up to 11 different channels. Here we are showing some of them. Okay, it's also multi-competition. You can see there how I'm speaking in English or in Spanish, and independently of that, it answers in that language. It's also multi-season. And at the same time, we can play content that is obviously protected by the rights of La Liga, even advertising. And of course, you can do any question that you can imagine about a player of La Liga, okay? You can basically say all of these questions, how you can help me. We will show our main menu, but also you can do more complex questions like, how many goals has Messi scored last season? In that way, and you will get that answer. Even for a journalist in sports, it would take a while to find the answer. Of course, all of the statistics that you can imagine, schedules, standings, past matches, future matches, okay, all of what you expect from an assistant provided by La Liga. But let me show it to you, because probably you are more familiar with Skype and Microsoft technologies, but let me show it to you how this works in Google Assistant, okay? That is basically another technology available to build skills. In this case, we have activated this, so only triggering the name, talk to La Liga, you will be redirected to La Liga in Google Assistant, in your own devices. You can try. Okay, so now when I'm talking to this assistant, first of all, we have converted all of these channels in GDPR compliance. I can ask about last match of Atletico de Madrid that happened a few days ago, and I can get all of this content, okay? Of course, it's going to narrate me the match. It's not going only to show me what was the final result. It's going to narrate me the match, okay, with even yellow cards and red cards. And as said, an important part of all of this is to leverage the powerful content that La Liga owns, protected by rights, and show that content embedded in the assistant, okay? All of this thanks to the power of one single platform running on our bot framework capabilities and our Azure cognitive services, okay? But this is basically what is live, okay? This is what is live nowadays. We want to show it to you some of the things that we are working and experiencing with La Liga, okay? So let me go back to my machine 1 second, and let me show it to you one of the funny games that we have made with this, okay? The capability to basically, through the assistant, send a selfie and get back a message where you can be compared with players. This is not only a funny game. You can see there the pictures of the players when they were 6, 9, and 11 years old. And it's capable to find those players among a database of more than 800 players. So it says that basically that kid looks more similar to that adult than any other one. But instead of showing to you only this, let's switch to 8, please. And let me do the demo live. Okay, so let's check who I look more similar to. Okay, so this is me. Okay, let's check. I can be compared with men, women, or all, which is quite cool. Okay, so I take a picture of myself. And let's see what it comes in a few seconds. Okay, we are comparing and analyzing, and in my case, okay, I look more similar to Vidal. I think it's because of the mohawk hairstyle, okay? It's that, anyway, it's very funny, okay? I said this is a game for fans that has been thought as a kiosk experience, but it's consuming at the same time the same assistant that I have showed to you, okay? So now let me switch to my device, okay? And for this, I'm gonna show you a very cool demo where we have created another completely different channel. You have seen working Skype, you have seen Google Assistant, you have seen now a kiosk experience, all of them powered by the same platform. But I'm gonna show you what is in my phone. So I'm gonna point to this side because I have less light, and let me show it to you. So I'm gonna open this, you can watch it, right? And now let me map this place, and I'm going to interact in a more immersive experience. Okay, in this case, with a virtual agent that is in augmented reality. Okay, so let me open this, and I have here the log of La Liga, okay, doing this pulse, okay, this heartbeat, and let me talk to him. Who is Lionel Messi?
Let me look it up. 1 minute. Lionel Messi is a professional footballer.
So it uses the same information provided by the bot framework now to show the experience in a more immersive way.
Centimeters. He was born on June 24, 1987. Is there anything else I can help you with?
What's La Liga? So if I ask for what's La Liga, even we can play videos. That is part of the advertising of La Liga in Asia. Okay, even show a video. So this experience,
it was great. The locals are a bit mad.
This experience could be even geolocated in different places, engaging with the fans.
They do the weirdest things.
And let me show you one more. Barcelona full squad. So for Barcelona full squad.
Barcelona full squad.
Okay, let me do it again, sorry. Barcelona full squad. It fails, I don't know why. Demo effect, as you know. Okay, so in this case, basically what we have shown to you is a completely different channel, okay, using the same platform. So let's switch again to the slides, because I'm going to try to explain you how all of this magic has been done. Okay, so here you have the architectural diagram of all of this, okay? And highlighted in green, light green, okay, you can see the 4 channels that I showed to you in the demo. It's Skype, it's Google Assistant, where we have built, you know that Skype is a channel that is built in by default, but for Google Assistant, we have created a new connector that is connected to direct line channel, okay? This connector is built in Node.js, and today we are announcing also that this a part of this connector, okay, will be also available to download open source. Then you have seen the Windows app, that is a kiosk application, okay, with some concrete features that is, again, connected with the bot service and the capabilities to send images and to receive images. And finally, you have seen a custom iOS app created in this case, in ARKit, okay, where I can interact with an augmented reality experience, okay? Apart from that, you have also other capabilities and other channels, you know, up to your imagination of the capabilities on your companies to connect with all of these capabilities. And in the core part of all of this, what is it? You know, basically bot framework with all of the logic. Also, we have scaled each one of these channels in a different way through the flexibility of our app services. We are tracking, of course, every single question and every single answer through App Insights and storing all of this in a storage account to have reporting on top of that. Of course, we keep secure all of the information about the keys that we need to use for consuming all of those services. And in the most important part of all of these are the services that we are consuming in the center, the bot intelligence, okay? Of course, nothing of this could be done without QnA and this language understanding. But for some of the experiences that I showed to you today, you have seen me interacting with my speech. You have seen me interacting with my images that are recognized by the Face API. And to differentiate different languages, we have text analytics. And of course, as you can imagine, some of the players of La Liga are from many different countries, and you can do mistakes or misspellings on their names. So we correct all of that thing with Bing spell check. And finally, we have a hidden feature here that is the content moderation. That obviously we don't want the people trying to troll the assistant, so we use content moderation for that. And all of that is consuming the data and cache layer, where we have a super optimized SQL database getting data from all of the sources of La Liga, the CMS, the statistics provider, and also the Fantasy League game. All of these synchronized with different functions and so on. So having said so, let me switch again to Tulsi, that is going to show you not only these capabilities, but also what are the next capabilities that QnA and are going to provide to this scenario. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesus. So you guys saw that. That was an amazing customer story. I didn't hear any claps. If you guys want to clap now, go ahead. So, yeah. Cool. So yeah, to build an amazing customer story like that, you need to use the whole comprehensive set of skills that Microsoft provides for conversational AI. This includes Azure's cognitive services, Azure Bot Service, and Microsoft's bot framework. All of that comes together to help create this. Just like when you're creating any other application, you have a development lifecycle that you follow. Similarly, you have a lifecycle for creating a conversational bot as well, all the way from design to evaluate. A big portion of that lifecycle is actually infusing natural language intelligence using cognitive services like language understanding and QnA Maker. In today's session, we're going to be spending a little more time talking through the details of these cognitive services and look at some examples using this great customer story of La Liga. I'm going to dive right into a demo. So the exciting thing we've done is just for build, we've created like a sample bot of some scenarios that La Liga wanted in the future and made a bot that we can show you live. And we've also made this sample available on GitHub for you guys to use and try out. Cool. So we're going to demo this on Bot Framework Emulator. This is the V4 version of the Bot Framework Emulator. In the middle is where we're going to be typing the questions. And it shows you the actual answers in the same web chat UI framework. On the left, you can see connected services. So it shows you all of the services that the bot is connected to. So in this case, the bot's connected to language understanding, or LUIS, as well as QnA Maker. and it's also using dispatch. Dispatch is used to arbitrate when anytime a user query comes in, to arbitrate between models. So let's try it out. I'm not a super football savvy person, as Nair keeps telling me, but I know that there's a big game happening tomorrow in Champions League with Liverpool and one of La Liga's teams, Barcelona. So let's try that. Okay. Let's see if the bot knows that. When is Liverpool versus Barcelona in the Champions League? And so as we're typing it, let's see, when you click on it, so you see that on the right-hand corner, you see the log start showing up, and you can click on any of those traces and see the details of the JSON objects in the traces section above. So that's why the emulator is really helpful in testing and debugging your bot before you actually deploy it. And anytime, even when it's in production, you can use this to quickly keep debugging your bot as well. Okay, let's keep going. So if everyone knows, I didn't know what El Clasico match is. It's apparently, for those who don't know, it's Real Madrid versus Barcelona, and it gets 3 times the viewing of Super Bowl matches. So let's find out, when was the last Real versus Barca match?
Wasn't the greatest season for Real Madrid, though.
And so here, you can see that the bot's recognizing that in this case, Real Madrid was the home team and Barca was the away team. If you switch it around, let's see what happens. The bot is able to identify that Barca, and you see we don't have to say Barcelona, you can say Barca. You can create a lot of intelligence in the bot that way. So when you switch it around, again, the bot understands that in this case, Barcelona is the home team and Real Madrid becomes the away team. So now let's find out something more about Barcelona, right? When are they playing another team, Getafe? And let's say I want to buy tickets for that game. Let Nair figure out how to type that. So yeah, when are they playing Getafe? And let me get tickets. So the bot takes that slightly complex sentence and parses it and gives me 2 answers, both that when is the next game happening, and also gives me tickets. So if you look at the tickets, it says you've chosen to buy tickets, and it tells me where the game is. The game is in Camp Nou, which is the stadium, the home stadium for Barcelona. Great, so I have my tickets, but I don't know how to get to the stadium. So let's find out. How do I get to Camp Nou? And now the bot gives me much more details. So if you want to scroll up, it tells me, okay, how far away Barcelona is, how to get to Camp Nou, and it also gives me options for how to get there, depending on what mode of travel I want to choose. So if I say I want to drive, let's say driving, so I can go through this guided conversational flow, and then let's say, is there parking available? Showing me some options for parking. Awesome. So I'm all set. I know how to get to the stadium, but now I need to figure out where my seat is. So let's ask if the bot knows, show me the seating plan.
Eating plan, I must be hungry.
Not the eating plan, seating. I get that, and I get the details from the website itself. So this, you can see, again, this is a real bot that we've built. You can see the sample later, but it shows you that whole flow of me figuring out where the match is, what's happening, scores, get the tickets, and then get to the stadium and get my seats, right? This is what we built. We'll show you now how we actually built this and built the natural language models around it. Let's switch back to slides. So that was a demo. And so just like I showed you the development lifecycle for creating a conversational bot, you now have a similar lifecycle for creating a natural language model that goes behind the bot. Again, all the way from design to evaluate. So I'll show you those for QnA Maker, and Nair will walk through that for language understanding. All right. Let's start with QnA Maker. What is QnA Maker? Those of you who haven't tried it, it is awesome. You should try it now. QnA Maker is a really easy way for you to create a conversational layer over your data, any existing data. This can be FAQ pages, support websites, PDFs, product manuals, whatever. It can also be either just an offline file. It can be in SharePoint. We're announcing that as well today. So pop that into QnA Maker. It extracts Q&As from it and puts it into a really easy-to-use UI. And you can use that UI to manage it, edit, change your knowledge base, and then quickly deploy a bot from it. Now, you can also add personality to that bot by using chit-chat, and then scale it up or down very easily. The cool thing is, because of the easy-to-use UI and the no-code bot deployment, you can now have, you don't need developer expertise or AI expertise to create a bot. However, if you want to go into the details, go under the cover, get into the code, you can go in, change stuff, customize it just for your scenario, or even use the Azure CLI tools to deploy all of this. You don't have to use the UI. So what's new at Build? This is what we have in general. So in QnA Maker, we have 3 pillars: extraction, intelligence, and conversation. So we're announcing a few key things at Build today that's going to enable the scenarios that I showed you. The key thing in extraction, when you give any document, currently we just extract simple QnA pairs, but today we're announcing the capability of extracting hierarchical information from documents that have inherent hierarchy in them. And we're also enabling SharePoint extraction. In intelligence, we're allowing people to have, allowing the ranking model to keep context and to have much more intelligence in multi-turn conversations, as well as improvements in our active learning, which I'll talk about in a minute. Third, conversation. You can easily create a much more complex guided conversational flow using QnA Maker as well as bot framework. So let me show you what I mean. So we're going to start by taking an example scenario that you just saw, which was how to get to that stadium information, seating plan, all of that. I'm going to use that. So in that same flow, you first identify your data sources. So we find that, then create your knowledge base. So let me show you how to do that. So in this case, for La Liga, one of the biggest questions that they had was, given that you have information available for a stadium like Camp Nou, which we just saw, there's a lot of information out there in either public websites or in their own documents. However, to do this at scale, to extract all of this at scale and be able to do this for 40 or so teams that La Liga has is pretty hard. You can do it manually one at a time. So how do you solve that problem of automatically taking all of that and creating a conversational interface out of it and do it at scale? Using QnA Maker. So using QnA Maker, you can now use all of these URLs, pop them in the UI, and get the kind of experience that you just saw in the bot. How does that happen? Let me show you. So in the example that I showed you, where you can talk about the options for driving, this is what your knowledge base, if you're familiar with QnA Maker, looks like. So you have questions and you have answers, but there's a new view now called the context view, which shows you the inherent relationships between QnA pairs. So now you can see that, and I'll show you this in a live demo in a second, but you can see now that I'm seeing the relationship between travel and the travel options under it. Similarly, in the answers, I can now see prompt buttons that show me how I can connect QnA pairs. And this happens automatically just when I put that URL in. Let's see a live demo. All right. So this is the example that I was showing you, where you can see this is a URL that I found which has information about this stadium, Camp Nou. You can find similar information about every single stadium. So this is just this URL itself. It contains some structure in it. You can see some of these images look familiar. So what I did was take this and paste it into my QnA Maker knowledge base. And I'll show you the knowledge base that was created. So if you can see, you see now that the source here is exactly that same URL. And you're seeing some questions and answers. So the new view, which I mentioned, is a public preview that we're announcing called multi-turn, which you can show, with which you can see context. So in this case, when you see that I open the context view, you'll see that I can see the stadium name on top and all of the sub-QnA pairs under it. And similarly, and so there's all of the hierarchy is shown in detail. So how does that look in the actual chat interface? It's hard to see it and understand exactly what's happening here. This is for authoring. So let's try the same example out. Let's use my test pane. So this is the inbuilt test interface that QnA Maker provides. Let me try the same example. How do I get to Camp Nou? And you see that this was taken exactly from the URL that you saw earlier. It shows the information, and then it shows me prompts below it. Now I can either click on the prompt or I can type. And so you see sorry, my audio seems to be cutting out. So you see the kind of interface that users will have as well. So in this case, I can now choose to just type this in.
It's on multi-turn.
Can you guys hear now? Yeah. I can now choose to type this in and say, parking available.
The mic.
Now? Awesome. Cool. So I can see all of this. Now this is what comes again out of the box, like I mentioned. I can always edit and change and add more stuff to this. So for example, let me go to the second page, and I'm going to show you in match day travel, we now just have driving, train, metro, and airports. I like buses personally, so let me add a new option for buses. When I clicked on add a new prompt, a prompt window showed up which tells me how to create this. I can add a new display text. I'm going to say buses. And I can either link to an existing answer. So if I start typing, all the possible answers, knowledge base will show up. I don't have any answers for buses in this case, so I'm going to create a brand new one and say, OK, the bus route is B4 or something. Hit save. And now you can see in that same question, match day travel, you immediately see a new option called buses, and you see the relationship in the context tree as well. So it's that simple to add your guided conversational flow, and you saw how that worked in the bot as well. Super simple. Again, you can. So we just saw how to test it using that test pane, and then you can just publish your knowledge base with the click of a button and make that available. So what happens when you publish it? How is the context maintained? How is this flowing through our APIs? I'll show you this through an example. So the main question, I send in a post request using this API that says, how do I get to Camp Nou? Simple. But what happens next? How do I make sure that the answer I get back contains the prompts in it? So when the post response comes back from QnA Maker, we now have a new section, a new set of fields called context. The context field contains a bunch of prompts, and each prompt has a display text, which I just entered, and you saw that in the pop-up window, and IDs associated with it. The IDs are important. IDs are what we use to connect two QnA pairs together. So now we know what this flow is. We know this turn. We got the results for how to get to Camp Nou. Now, the next turn, when I say driving, or when the user clicks on driving, we need to know what the previous answer was. So we need to make sure that the context is being sent back the next turn. So pass that back on. Remember, we saw the ID was 6. So the new answer is, new question is, I want to drive. We pass on, along with the normal request that you send for QnA Maker, a new set of fields called context, in which we pass on what the previous QnA ID was, as well as the previous question answer. And that's it. That's how this works. Now we're back to the last stage, which is evaluate. So you built your awesome guided conversational flow model. You've put it out in your bot, like I just showed you. People are using it. How do you make it get better and better with time? Using active learning. So active learning gives, through QnA Maker's active learning feature, we actually announced this in February, but we've made improvements. So what we do is, based on users' suggestions and usage, QnA Maker in the UI will show you suggestions for the optimal questions that you need to add to improve your knowledge base and therefore improve your bot. So it gives you a few suggestions just based on what's the optimal thing that needs to be added to your knowledge base. So I'll show you an example just using this one. Can you switch? So you can see this is the knowledge base that I just showed you earlier. You see filter by suggestions. When I click on that, it shows me a few options. So like in this case, how do I go to Camp Nou? Travel to Camp Nou. These are suggestions that can come up. I can either accept or reject them if I feel like they're not super relevant. Similarly, for the option for metro, it says, is there a metro station? Again, I can accept or reject it. So that's it. It's that simple. You have it, you've deployed it, it's getting better with time, and your QnA Maker model is ready. What do you need next to make your bot more intelligent and dynamic? Language understanding. Can you switch back? So Nair is going to talk about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Tulsi. As Tulsi sort of introduced, you can get a bot up and running by using QnA pairs. You can extract things from knowledge and information that already exists in order to create a conversational experience. But to make a conversation really intelligent, you really need to understand what your user is talking about and try to abstract that and extract it from these utterances. And the language understanding cognitive services does exactly that. It gives developer a simple and easy way without any expertise in artificial intelligence means to be able to extract elements from these utterances and use it to create an intelligent conversation. This build, we're focusing on three main highlights. We are introducing new enhanced entities. These advanced entity types allow you to create more engaging and deeper understanding of the utterances and your users. We're also running through some insights through an analyst dashboard that gives the developer the ability to understand the performance of his or her model that they're developing. And finally, we have updated our APIs in order to give more control and give more access to this information much more easily. I'm going to run through sort of examples of how we use this to make a bot that we created, like the one in La Liga, much simpler and much more easier to develop with less lines of code. And as Tulsi sort of started out, that the process of building a language model goes through these different phases. And enhanced entities help you in building and designing a schema and a model to understand the utterances using the language understanding service. Okay, in the world of soccer, or in the world of sports at large, you know that there's a home and away team. So the games are different, just like sort of we demonstrated in the bot that we created. And in order to understand that previously, you would extract that Real Madrid and Barcelona are two teams, and then you have to resolve that downstream. And it's a bit of a problem in some of the logic. You have to understand what comes first, and it's really complicated. To that end, we have introduced what we call entity roles across all entity types within the language understanding model that you can develop, that you're able to use machine learning in order to understand that the first team plays the role of a home, and the second team plays the home of away. And then you're able to use that extraction immediately downstream in your logic in order to process that. And I'll quickly show you how this looks in the JSON object. If you're not familiar with this, this is the user interface for the language understanding service, Lewis.ai. This is not the only way you can access all of this cool stuff. You can use the SDK, you can use the tooling in order to reach this, but this creates a really good visual effect that you can look at. So if you're unfamiliar with the interface on the side there, the assets and the components that you have within your model, the intents and entities, you have the list of intents there, and I can run into one of these intents and see the utterances that I've labeled. I've identified teams in there. These are the examples, and that is how simple it is to create a language model. All you need to know is that you need to know the name of teams, you need to create these things, and you don't need to see the underlying technology that makes you understand that. You just get the understanding at the output in the JSON object. So if I have this model and I run this utterance, I typed it so I don't do typos for this case, and I inspect sort of the output, and it's able to identify that one of the entities is Real Madrid is the home team and Barca is the away team, and I can use that, and I can look at the detailed JSON object over there, and you can use this in order to identify, if you look there, sort of Barcelona is the away team and Real Madrid is the home team. So creating a language understanding model is that simple, and these roles allows you to understand these entities and simplify the logic that you have downstream. Go back to the slides, please. And it's not only limited to teams and sports. You can think of other scenarios that you have this notion of roles. You can see emails and carbon copy. You can think of your shopping list that you want to process, that you have item number 2, and you have 2 items of that thing you want to buy. And these are 2 numbers, but how do you distinguish between them? And it simplifies the logic further down that you can actually use it much faster in your business logic. Okay, in many cases, as a developer, you have a resolution for these entities. You don't want to push it to the language model. You already know, for example, in this case, when are they playing Getafe, which was one of the examples we've shown. They refers to Barcelona. You already know in the memory of the bot, or you know my preferences, you know my favorite team, which is apparently not really Barcelona, but you have a resolution for that, and you don't want the model to do that. So how do I get about that? You can either go do a really cumbersome model that tries to resolve them and tries to work with that, or simplifying it by being able to resolve it and send the resolution down to the language understanding model. To that end, we have introduced what we call external entities, where you do this resolution in the bot end and then send that on to the language understanding model in order to process and further understand the other components within the utterance by passing over this component. So you do your external entity recognizer. That can be, for example, something specific for your organization, for your enterprise. That can be something that addresses issues with speech and models that are very specific to the acoustic environment that you have. All of these resolutions that you can do on your side, on the local sort of side, you send over that and you can use external entities. There's another way to resolve that, and I have the information, I have the knowledge, but I don't want to do my own resolution. I don't want to sort of do that on my end. I want to do it in the model end. And this piece of information you want to pass over. For example, the ones we showed about Liverpool in the game tomorrow, like the Champions League is a big sporting event that happens in Europe, but it's not really sort of La Liga. So this piece of information, it changes every year and every stage. So you want to pass over this information into the language understanding model. So rather than resolve it on your end, you resolve it sort of on the language end. And to that, you send that information that you have, that knowledge that you have over into the language understanding model, and it uses it in order to resolve entities in the model itself, and rather than having to sort of resolve it externally. And that would previously happen that you would need to go and get this information, put it into your model, and then republish, which is a very painful experience because if it's ever changing, then you have to do this process of republishing every single time. Now it's much simpler that you can actually send this on the fly in runtime and you don't have to republish. The other cool stuff about that is you can actually personalize it. Previously, these entities in the model that you can actually capture are the model-wide. They're the application-wide. But now if I can send some dynamic lists down, then I can send my personal flavor of music. I can send my personal restaurant list. I can sell things that are personal, and then I can resolve this in a more personal perspective for the user. So this comes as a way to resolve that and help sort of your business logic further down in order to personalize and resolve all of these entities. So collectively, these new entity extractions that we have presented in the language understanding help you design and build more advanced models. There's a couple of other things sort of that happen. We're expanding our foreign language support. We are deploying our service in more locations, including China. We're also adding a lot of the skills that are being developed so that you can get up and running with a conversational model pretty quickly with all the sort of basic utilities that you can have. And we've also optimized our training service. So if you haven't used the LUIS for quite some time, the language understanding service, you'll be interested to sort of try the new training service, which is farther sort of optimized. So I've built and I've designed my model, and then I come the question, which usually comes my way, is this the best model that I have? How can I improve it? Sort of as a developer, you have something. Is it the best? Are there ways to sort of resolve that? And to that end, we have created some insights, or try to extract some insights from your model through an analytics dashboard to help you improve and evaluate your model. And this analytics dashboard not only sort of gives you a run through the model, it also gives you actionable recommendations. And I'll show you the dashboard. So this is the model that we've built for La Liga for the purpose of build. And you get a big snapshot of how this model is performing. So overall, on the training data, I'm getting just over 95%, which is reasonable, but this is the training data, so you should actually be doing much better. So we need ways of improving it. It highlights sort of the major issues with how I modeled this. There's some data imbalance there, there's some incorrect predictions, and there's some unclarity in some of their predictions. It also gives you some statistics and the ability sort of to compare with your previous models. Quickly, you can also look at the distribution of the different intents, and you can immediately identify that there's one here that stands out that is where I should focus, and maybe that's the most efficient way of improving the model. It's highlighted that there's issues in the first one there, and if I invest more in there, then I probably will get a better model. And it also allows you to dig deeper into some of these specific intents that we have, looks at them, sees their performance across them, and gives you a list of possible actionable recommendations, including merging different intents together, including splitting intents. They seem to be trying to do too much. Looking to where you can introduce patterns, where you can introduce different components in your modeling in order to help you. And you can immediately jump into one of these and look at where the problem is, identify where pain points can be, and try to do relabeling, reassignment of these utterances to different intents, and hence gain more efficiently an improvement in your model. This dashboard currently focuses on intents. We intend to extend post-build on testing platform in general for language understanding modeling, including using the batch testing with this and expanding this to entities. So as you use this, you'll see it develop into being a much more inclusive tool for all of the components within Lewis. Once we're happy with the model, then we go publish it. You can publish it to either the shared runtime or the containerized deployment that we have. And you connect the dots using bot framework that connects it with the different channels, connects it with all of the overall bot logic that is present. And to put the icing on the cake, and before that, once you deploy it, then we have the new APIs. The new APIs, they come with enhanced features. We've listened to a lot of the feedback that came from developers our way, and we've made our best effort in order to improve them to make accessing data out of the language understanding much faster. I will only highlight two of the main features. There's much more. You should totally go and check these endpoint APIs. Previously, in order you publish a model and you only have one version that you can access. In order to get a different version, then you have to have a different application, which is a more complicated way of managing your life cycle in developing different versions within your own application. So we've introduced version ID directly from the URL, so you can ping multiple versions right from there, so you don't need to break any previous code. You can also access the different resources that you have produced in the final JSON object much faster using JSON objects rather than the way that we incorporate them in lists in arrays previously. And these are some of the highlights of the API. You can totally have a look at it, and you'll see a lot of interesting and cool stuff that simplifies the process of consuming the output of Lewis. All of these are public preview. We should be hoping to GA them pretty quickly as we get more feedback and they're more solid. Then probably before Ignite, they should be GA, hopefully. And finally, to the whole life cycle, at the end of the spectrum there is the evaluate and the active learning, which puts the icing on the cake and helps developers who have bootstrapped the models to continually improve it using their endpoint hits. And to that, we have active learning, which has been part of the language understanding service from the get-go. And you look at the utterances that you've come, and we have selected some of them. You don't actually have to run through all of them. We select the most efficient ones that will help you progress your model the best, and we present them to you in order to be able to relabel them, to look at them, add them to your training, and then retrain and get this whole cycle happening. So to just summarize what we had this build as announcements, in QnA Maker, there's the multi-turn conversation, which enables you to create from knowledge and information that is present out there. A lot of multi-turn experience, also the active learning suggestions that come to help you improve your knowledge base. And on the language understanding, the advanced entity extractions that help you process the utterance, and insights that help you through the analytics dashboard better understand where to improve your model and how to advance it. And all of this comes into play within the Bot Framework SDK. That's sort of where conversation exists, and that's the tool that binds everything together. And there's a few announcements this build, including the adaptive dialogues, including the language generation. Actually, the demonstration that we went through earlier sort of used language generation to create this interactive experience with users rather than having to go and sort of type your own templates. You use the language generation components. You also use adaptive cards to create a more engaging conversation with your users. There's the new skills that are being presented in preview, and we're advancing them. And there is a better integration with speech and custom wake words that you would see in the car. I think most of you saw the demo and sort of that integration with speech and this Hey Joe and that BMW sort of gets it up and running. So these are the cool new stuff in the Bot Framework SDK. You should go and download the most recent Bot Framework SDK and also the emulator that you saw sort of that helps you interact with your conversation prior to deploying it. There's a couple of things happening around conversation as I started off. Everything and sort of has been mentioning around conversation. Every keynote, every session has touched on this. These are some of the ones that we highlighted. There is a 2 o'clock tomorrow about speech. You can go and learn sort of the advancements in the speech service, which enables things like the virtual assistant for La Liga to be happening. There is the virtual assistant and how to compose that sort of with multiple devices with voice at 5, and sort of with the Bot Framework. There's the BMW car in the exhibit. You should go hop on it and try it, see how it works. And there is a demonstration about that 7:35 tonight. You should look at that. And Tulsi has a personalized chat session that would take sort of your chats and be able to personalize it to user. And she'll talk to that on Wednesday at 11:20. You should go and check that out too. These are sort of some of the links, the samples for that bot that we had sort of will be placed on this repo. You can get what's new in the Bot Framework all up. So the SDK, QnA Maker, and Language Understanding Cognitive Service, and what's new in that space there. And you can totally try the La Liga Virtual Assistant. You can try it on the Skype channel. You can do the Google Assistant, and you can sort of join us in the demo area for trying it out and see which player you resemble from La Liga. We're out sort of camping in the exhibit. You can come and talk to us. We can sort of see how we can help you sort of realize interesting conversations and create that to your users. And with that, I also thank Tulsi and Jesus for joining me here. And we have La Liga present. So we thank you all for joining us in this session. Thank you.
Questions, feel free to ask us. Yeah. In cognitive services to talk about content moderation. So just come to the expo session. We have the experts for content moderation sitting there. Thanks. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. Sure. No, if you guys want to come to use the mic as well, yeah.
Can you touch on localization side, specifically Japanese language support on QnA side as well as Louis' side?
So
I didn't get, did you get that?
I can take for the QnA Maker. Maybe you want to take that. Yeah.
I didn't listen to the question.
The localization in Japanese. So I think we're actively working on it, even though we have support where we realize that it's not yet on par with some of the other English languages. So we're actively working on that. We have some private preview versions as well available. So if you really want to try that out, some people on my team are here. If you want to just give us email IDs or just contact information, we can give you private preview access for QnA Maker. And I think, Louis, also you have...
I think at large, sort of for cognitive service, I talk to a lot of customers, and the notion of starting in English and then going to other languages has not resonated well with a lot of people. We are addressing conversation in a global market.
Yeah.
So for example, businesses like La Liga or global enterprises, they require sort of support all over. And to that, we've listened. There is an investment in expanding foreign languages and making sure that they're all at par with English. So there's no holes there. Oh, this doesn't work here, this doesn't work there. So within the next few months, you'll find sort of everything sort of matching. And moving forward, we'll make sure that all languages are supported. And Japanese is obviously one of the supported languages currently in language understanding service. And we should continue to support it, sort of all of them, including adding more languages sort of moving forward. So you'll see more language support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just extending from his question, so do you make still multiple Lewis models for each language?
For each region, you mean?
No, for each language supported. Like, I mean, there's going to be a Lewis model for the same thing, but in English, and then in German, and then in French. And,
Have separate models.
There's multiple ways of doing that. Okay. It's more of an art than a science kind of thing. So there's the notion of creating one model, one language, and then piggybacking on translation, for example, in order to come back to that. So that's a way. And if you go to the bot framework, there's some samples.
Is that natively supported? I mean, and the point is, I mean, we could do that before passing it on to Lewis, because when the user types something, I go and I get the translation service to translate it into English and then pass it on to Lewis. Right. That's what we've been doing.
Yes.
I mean, maybe
that's a way to do it.
Yeah, it should be probably even baked in. I mean,
right.
Within the Lewis model itself, I mean.
We can think of that, but like sort of.
Services.
Fair.
But translation comes with errors. It's not sort of error-free, and if it's doing things that sort of are not sort of handled well with developers, you don't know what's happening there. Like the whole notion of the language understanding service is to give developers the ability to understand what's happening and to pinpoint where I need to improve and what's the problem. I can go as much sort of take all this data, crunch it into Azure machine learning, and have a model out there, and then if it doesn't work, I'll like, okay, figures I have to go do that again kind of thing. So the ability to explain and understand where your pains are. So if you do this on the fly without the developer having this observable and being able to control it, it sometimes sort of would feel a bit strange. And that's why sort of they're building blocks that build on each other. The translation has errors, maybe in some of the very popular languages, for example, Spanish to English or French. The translation does almost perfect job, so there's no worries about that. But once you go to markets that are less sort of treaded in translation, so you go to other European markets, Czech or Turkish, or you go to certain dialects that are there, then it sort of starts to get a bit fuzzy how you want to do it. I've seen people sort of also blend in within the same model multiple dialects, for example. Dialects, you can act in the same manner. So English US, they have their own terms. Like the BMW there, they call it the boot and they call it the hoodie. So which one would I use? You can actually use both of them in one language that encompasses this notion of English. And you can have one French. It's sort of customized. We've seen people, I've suggested to some of our customers who have one of the tier 2 languages, specifically Turkish, and they said, our people who design these utterances and do labeling, they don't understand English. I can't expect them to sort of to go label English data. They want to label Turkish data. And then they want to develop the models in Turkish. And you'll actually see that language understanding currently supports Turkish for that specific customer. So it's a matter of how the dynamics of your development process goes that you can actually go down that path.
I think it depends on the scenario, like Nair was saying, right? In some scenarios it works to have translation versus in some you really need the data depending on what that scenario, which is why I don't think we want to bake it in right away, but it's a fair point.
Sorry for the long answer to the question.
No, because I was trying it some time back, even with the bot framework, I don't know, 3 or the newer version. That came with core, and the language translation was working automatically with just lines of code. But it wasn't coming from Lewis. It was more a NuGet package which was being added into the framework. Anyways, my last question, really, I'll make it short, was this Google Assistant's connector that you guys
are
Yeah, it's going to be available today.
Yeah.
And it'll be listed like all
It's in one of the channels, yeah. If you go to the booth also, it's a new channel that's being announced.
Okay.
In preview, yeah.
Right, thank you.
No problem.
Does Lewis, are the languages supported by Lewis, do they have the same capabilities in terms of understanding?
We are making sure that they do. There's 2 sides to that question. It's the core language model. There's a language model associated with every language. We're trying to make sure that that works well. And then there's the components, which we call the pre-built entities and pre-built domains that we can support. They were currently sort of more spaced out, that most of them were in English and Chinese, and then in different languages, it was sort of bits and pieces somewhere there. We're making sure that that table, if you look at sort of that map between pre-built entities and languages, it will all be checked within the next 2 to 3 month maximum. Sort of, you'll have that sort of across all languages. So you can, if you build a model in English that sort of gets entity recognizers doing geography and doing location and doing named entity recognizers, you can just more or less just change the culture into Japanese or to whatever language or culture we support, and it should work seamlessly just right there. So.
And that's coming up in a few months.
We're trickling them down sort of one after the other. We're going through the process. This is a cross-cognitive service too. This is not just specific to language understanding. I think the notion of supporting more languages in speech, in language, in language, in QnA Maker across the board is being pushed and driven because our customers are asking for that. So.
Okay. A second question is on the QnA Maker. I mean, it's really exciting to see that you guys can actually process the PDF and extract make the QnA. Now, in many enterprises, they have PDFs locally within their network. Is that a way to point your QnA Maker to that location and extract the?
Yeah. So, like I said, today we're just announcing SharePoint support. So if enterprises are using SharePoint and they don't want to have like as a local file that they upload, we support that. In fact, we just announced that very recently. We're trying to figure out how to extend that beyond the Microsoft SharePoint system to more, different enterprises have different systems. So it's not super easy. I don't know when we don't have a date for that, but we definitely have it for SharePoint, and we're going to improve that. And that's our first step towards doing, connected networks with enterprises. But yeah. No, just SharePoint today. It's next step. Yeah.
Just adding on to his question, right? He was talking to PDF. So we have a scenario where we have a lot of PowerPoint presentation, XLS,
right,
and PDFs and Word documents. So can all those be fit into this framework and create the knowledge base? Right.
So today we allow for Excels, PDFs, and Word documents. We don't yet do PPTs, but you can make that a PDF and sort of hand wave it. We're constantly improving the way we're doing extraction. So every couple of months, we have an improved extraction system. So you'll see more and more of these announcements coming. But today, PDFs, the extraction support is a lot better. If you haven't used it in the last couple of months, there's been some updates. So, yeah.
One more question. How does it handle the complex dependencies? Like, for example, I have PDF. I'm from text domain, right? So we have like text year 2018, this was the clause, 17, that was the clause. And based on the context of the user who's asking the question, it might go to previous section of the document or the next section of the document. Can all that complexity be handled?
Right. So with the multi-turn thing that we just enabled, it's in preview, so it's sort of early stages for it. Depending on feedback, we're going to keep refining. I would say this is a great example for us to work together and get feedback and improve it. So yeah,
Thank you.
But it's the start. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I think we're almost done. We're going to be around, but if anyone has any questions, we're going to be around for a bit for anyone to talk to us. Thank you.